Admiral Kate Morrison's fingers dug into the armrests of her command chair as another impact rocked the U.S. Nighthawk. Through the bridge's panoramic viewport, Earth's night side burned like a sea of torches, each light marking another city under Crick's bombardment. "Shield status," she demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos. Lieutenant Rodriguez's hands flew across his console. 18% and falling, Admiral. We can't take another direct hit. The Cricks had appeared 3 months ago, their crystalline ships darkening Earth's skies without warning or declaration of war. The Federation's response to humanity's distress calls had been diplomatic pleasantries and empty promises. Now, after 97 days of relentless assault, Earth's greatest cities lay in ruins. "Status of Protocol Phantom?" Morrison asked, her eyes fixed on the massive Cricks dreadnought moving into position above New York's smoldering remains. "Dr. Cooper reports final calibrations complete." Commander Sarah Hayes replied from Tactical. "But Admiral, there's no guarantee we'll survive the transition. The test runs we're conclusive enough," Morrison cut in. "We're out of alternatives." The bridge fell silent save for the wail of damage alarms. Every officer present knew the stakes. Protocol Phantom wasn't just a desperate gambit. It was a fundamental rewriting of physical laws that could tear them apart at the quantum level. "Multiple targets incoming," Rodriguez shouted. "Crick's boarding craft on attack vectors." Morrison opened a channel to the remainder of Earth's fleet. 12 ships, barely half of them combat-worthy. All vessels. "This is Admiral Morrison. Execute Protocol Phantom on my mark." The Crick's boarding craft grew larger on the view screen, their crystalline hulls refracting the fires below into prismatic death. Morrison thought of her daughter Elena, evacuated to the bunkers beneath Denver. She promised to come back. This was the only way to keep that promise. "Engineering reports phase shift drives at full power," Hayes announced. "It's now or never, Admiral." Morrison took one last look at her burning homeworld. "All ships, initiate synchronized Phantom transition in 3, 2, 1, mark." Reality rippled. Morrison's stomach lurched as the quantum field generators engage. Her skin tingled, then began to feel insubstantial, as though she were dissolving into mist. Several crew members cried out as their hands became translucent. "Phase transition at 30%. The computer announced dispassionately. 40%. 50%. The approaching Crick's vessels fired, but their energy beams passed harmlessly through the Nighthawk's now ghostly hull. Morrison watched in fascination as her own body became nearly transparent. 70%. Warning. Quantum stability declining. "Hold together," Morrison whispered. To her ship or her atoms, she wasn't sure which. 90%. Phase transition complete. The universe changed. Morrison could still see normal space, but it was like viewing it through frosted glass. The Nighthawk and its crew existed now as quantum phantoms, partially phased out of conventional reality. "All ships reporting successful transition," Hayes announced, her voice sounding distant despite her proximity. "No casualties." "Launch the decoys," Morrison ordered. Solid-state drones, pre-programmed with suicide protocols, emerged from the Earth Fleet's launch base. As the Crick's boarding craft reached their positions, the drones detonated in a carefully orchestrated series of nuclear explosions. Through the quantum haze, Morrison watched the Crick's commanders fall for their deception. The enemy fleet regrouped, their sensors detecting only radiation and debris where Earth's last ships had been. "Send the coded transmission to all bunker complexes," Morrison ordered. "Operation Ghost Fleet is now active." As her words echoed across the phantom-shifted bridge, Morrison allowed herself a grim smile. The Cricks thought they'd won, that humanity was broken. They'd celebrate their victory, report Earth's subjugation to their Federation masters, and begin their occupation in earnest. They'd never suspect that Earth's last defenders had become literal ghosts, watching, waiting, and preparing to show the galaxy why you should never corner a human. The Crick's luxury liner Crystal Ascendant represented everything First Minister Vextal loved about his species' dominance of the Federation. Its crystalline spires stretched nearly a kilometer into space, housing 3,000 of the galaxy's wealthiest beings. The recent victory over Earth had only heightened the Krix's prestige, drawing even more sycophants to their soirees. Another testament to Krix's superiority, Vextal proclaimed to his gathered guests in the grand observation deck. The humans thought their primitive weapons cold. The deck's temperature plunged. Frost crystallized on champagne glasses, and breath turned to vapor in the suddenly frigid air. Through the panoramic windows, space itself seemed to ripple. "Security breach," a guard shouted, but his words died as three massive shapes materialized through the hull. Earth warships, their forms translucent yet unmistakable, passed through the crystal ascendant structure as though it were mist. Vextal watched in horror as the impossible phantoms glided through his supposedly impregnable vessel. The ship's weapons remained solid enough. They sheared through power conduits and structural supports with surgical precision. No alarms sounded. They'd been cut off from the rest of the ship. "This is Admiral Morrison of the Earth Defense Force," a human voice echoed through the chamber. "Your vessel is now under our control. Consider this a reminder. Humanity is not defeated. We are everywhere. We are nowhere. And we are coming for what you stole from us." The ghost ships vanished, leaving behind 3,000 witnesses to the impossible. The Crystal Ascendant, pride of the Krix fleet, drifted powerless in space. "The rumors are spreading faster than we can suppress them," High Commander Zixera snarled, throwing a data crystal across the Krix high command chamber. 3 outposts gone dark in the past week alone. The Federation Council demands explanations. His subordinates shifted uncomfortably. The latest footage played above the conference table. Security cameras showing Earth ships appearing inside a sealed bunker on Krix Prime itself. The impossible raiders had destroyed a secret weapons facility and disappeared, leaving no traces for investigators to study. "The humans are dead," General Kexthor insisted. "We saw their fleet destroy itself. These are clearly Federation rebels using holographic projectors too." The chamber's lights flickered. Every Krix commander reached for their weapons as the temperature dropped. Through the reinforced walls, the ethereal form of a human warship passed like a leviathan swimming through ocean depths. Its weapons remained untouched, pointed directly at the gathered leadership. For 30 seconds, no one breathed. The phantom ship completed its pass and vanished, leaving only terror and questions in its wake. On Perseus Station, the Federation's largest trading hub, junior analyst Lirith couldn't stop watching the leaked footage. The official Krix explanation blamed mass hallucinations caused by human biological weapons, but she saw the patterns they missed. The Ghost Fleet never killed unnecessarily. Their attacks targeted military installations, weapon stockpiles, and command centers. When they struck civilian targets like the Crystal Ascendant, they disabled rather than destroyed. Each raid exposed Krix vulnerabilities while avoiding casualties. "You see it too, don't you?" a voice asked. Lirith turned to find Ambassador Naztul, representative of the collective worlds, studying her screens. "The precision," Lirith replied. "These aren't revenge attacks. They're systematic." Naztul nodded. The Krix claimed humans were savages, barely worthy of Federation membership. Yet these ghosts demonstrate more restraint than their conquerors ever did. "Ambassador, I've cross-referenced the attack patterns. They're not random. The Ghost Fleet is systematically isolating key Krix military assets from their support structure. It's like they're performing surgery on an empire." "Fascinating analysis," Naztul mused. "I don't suppose you'd be interested in sharing it with certain Federation Council members, ones who've grown concerned about Krix influence." Lirith glanced at her screens, where another report of ghostly ships flashed. "I thought we couldn't trust the Council after they abandoned Earth." "The Council is changing, dear analyst. The ghosts are seeing to that." Dr. James Cooper stared at the smoking remains of Test Chamber 7, his hands trembling as he recorded the results. The reinforced walls, designed to contain nuclear explosions hadn't even slowed Subject Charlie's molecular dispersion. Another volunteer lost to the void. "You should rest, James." General Marcus Wright's gravelly voice echoed through the Rocky Mountain Facility's laboratory. "That's the third failed test this week." Cooper ignored him, furiously scribbling calculations. Charlie's phase variance was off by 0.34%. If we adjust the quantum field harmonics. He trailed off, running a hand through his disheveled gray hair. "I can fix this. The Crix fleet will reach Mars in 18 months, Wright reminded him. "If Project Phantom isn't ready, then Earth falls." "I know." Cooper pulled up the holographic model of their latest attempt. "But I won't sacrifice more people to failed experiments." The general stepped closer, studying the swirling quantum equations. The volunteers knew the risks. "They believed in your work." "Believed," Cooper spat. Past tense. "Because they're gone. Not dead, Marcus. Gone. Scattered across quantum dimensions we can't even comprehend." He gestured to the test chamber. "Charlie had a family. How do I tell his wife that her husband didn't die, but instead became nothing?" Wright's response was cut off by a sudden commotion. Dr. Sarah Wells, Cooper's lead assistant, burst into the lab, her dark eyes wide with excitement. "James, the quantum anchor. I think I found the problem." Cooper and Wright hurried to her workstation, where complex simulations danced across multiple screens. Sarah pointed to a particular equation thread. "We've been trying to keep the whole object in phase with normal spacetime. But what if we maintain a quantum tether to base reality instead?" Cooper's exhaustion vanished as he absorbed the implications. A partial phase shift. The mass calculations would be. His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Sarah, you're brilliant. If we keep just enough molecular cohesion in normal space, the subject wouldn't dissolve across dimensions." Sarah finished. "They'd exist simultaneously in multiple quantum states, like a ghost." Wright breathed. "How soon can you test it?" Cooper was already programming the revised parameters. "Give me 48 hours to recalibrate the field generators. But we'll need another volunteer." "No." Sarah stood straighter. "I'll do it." "Absolutely not," Cooper protested. "You're too valuable to the project." "Which is exactly why it has to be me." She met his gaze steadily. "I understand the quantum mechanics better than any potential volunteer. If something goes wrong, I might be able to provide vital feedback before." She didn't finish the sentence. 2 days later, Cooper watched through reinforced glass as Sarah stepped into the modified test chamber. She wore a prototype quantum stabilization suit, its circuitry glowing faintly. "Field generators at 40%, Cooper announced, his voice tight. "Beginning partial phase shift." "Sarah, report any sensations immediately." "Tingling in my extremities," she replied calmly. "Vision blurring slightly, but molecular cohesion feels stable." 60%. Cooper watched the readings intently. Quantum tether holding. Sarah's form became translucent. She raised one ghostly hand, examining it with scientific detachment. "Fascinating. I can see through myself, but I still feel whole." 80%. Cooper held his breath. This was where they'd lost Charlie. "James." Sarah's excited voice crackled through the comm. "Try to grab my arm." Cooper glanced at Wright, who nodded. Entering the chamber, Cooper reached for Sarah's ethereal form. His hand passed through her arm like smoke. "Now watch." Sarah concentrated, and suddenly Cooper could grip her solid flesh. "We can control our tangibility. Don't you see what this means?" Cooper did. They had created more than a cloaking device or a new weapon. They had discovered a way to slip between the very fabric of reality itself. As Sarah shifted between solid and phantom states, Cooper's mind raced with possibilities. The Crix's mighty warships would be useless against an enemy that could ghost through their hulls. Their impenetrable bases would become death traps. Humanity finally had its shield and its sword. "General." Cooper turned to Wright, hope blazing in his tired eyes. Begin fleet modifications. Project Phantom is ready for full implementation. The Krik's victory parade on New Damascus was meant to demonstrate their unshakable might to the Federation. 200 crystalline warships hung in perfect formation above the capital city, their hulls gleaming in the twin suns' light. Below, thousands of beings from across Federation space watched massive holographic displays of Earth's conquest. High Commander Zixaris stood on the command platform of his flagship, basking in the adulation. Let all witness the price of defying The temperature plunged. Through the fleet's precise formations, 5 human warships phased into existence, their phantom forms burning with an ethereal blue light. The U.S. Nighthawk led the formation, passing straight through Zixaris' flagship as if it were made of smoke. Impossible, Zixaris screamed. All ships, open fire. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes passed harmlessly through the ghost fleet. The human ships maintained their deliberate pace, weaving between the Krik's vessels with almost casual grace. They weren't attacking. They were performing an inspection. Admiral Morrison's voice echoed across all frequencies. Note how your mighty weapons cannot touch us. Remember this demonstration. Earth is coming for what you stole. The ghost ships vanished, leaving the Krik's fleet frozen in humiliated silence. Below, the gathered diplomats whispered among themselves. The invincible conquerors suddenly seemed very vulnerable indeed. Status report. Morrison commanded from the Nighthawk's phantom-shifted bridge. The ship phased through an asteroid, its sensors continuing to track the Krik's fleet they just embarrassed. Mission accomplished, Admiral, Commander Hayes reported. Quantum drive stable at 85%. Our little parade demonstration is already trending across Federation networks. Morrison allowed herself a small smile. The Ghost Fleet's campaign of strategic humiliation was working better than they'd hoped. Every public appearance rattled the Krik's carefully cultivated image of superiority. New target data incoming, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. Long-range sensors detected a Krik's slave transport near the Hercules cluster. 2,000 beings aboard, mostly political prisoners. Morrison's smile vanished. Time to remind the Federation what humanity stands for. Plot an intercept course, and get me Dr. Cooper. I want to try something new with the phase variants. The Krik's slave transport Iron Justice represented everything corrupt about the Empire. Its hold contained dissidents, resistance leaders, and anyone else who'd questioned Krik's authority. Captain Yextor proudly maintained the most secure prison ship in the fleet, which made it all the more shocking when the entire prisoner complement vanished simultaneously. How? Yextor raged at his security chief. The cells were phase-shielded. The humans couldn't possibly. But we did. Morrison's voice cut through the ship's comm. The Nighthawk shimmered into view outside the transport's viewport, its cargo holds temporarily solid to contain the rescued prisoners. Your phase shields had a quantum resonance we could match. Dr. Cooper sends his regards. The Ghost Fleet vanished with their liberated cargo, leaving Yextor to explain how he'd lost 2,000 high-value prisoners to phantoms. The Federation Security Council's emergency session dissolved into chaos as the Krik's delegation demanded action. The humans are terrorists, Ambassador Kexival thundered. They attack peaceful ships, disrupt vital commerce. Peaceful. Analyst Lyrith's voice cut through the chamber. She hadn't been invited to speak, but the data crystals she threw onto the display table demanded attention. These records show every vessel the Ghost Fleet has targeted. Military installations, weapon factories, slave transports, strange targets for mere terrorists. The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Through it all, Ambassador Naztful watched with growing satisfaction. The humans were doing more than just surviving. They were systematically exposing the rot at the Federation's core. In her private chambers that evening, Naztful activated a heavily encrypted channel. Admiral Morrison's translucent form appeared in the secure hologram. The Council is fracturing exactly as we predicted, Naztful reported. Your precision strikes are forcing them to confront Krik's corruption. How soon can you move to Phase 2? Morrison's ghostly image smiled. Tell your allies to be ready. The Cricks are about to learn why humans make the most dangerous enemies. We know when to strike hard and when to haunt their nightmares instead. The Federation Council chamber erupted into chaos as security footage played across the massive holoscreens. The Cricks' dreadnought Eternal Dominion fired its main cannon, vaporizing a Federation peacekeeping vessel with 10,000 souls aboard. They refused to drop shields for inspection. High Commander Zixera defended. Our sensors detected phase shift signatures. It was a medical transport. Ambassador Nastol's voice cut through the uproar. The normally diplomatic representative of the collective worlds trembled with rage. Carrying refugees from the Hercules cluster conflict that your forces escalated. The chamber's synthetic marble floors shuddered as species took sides. 1,000 years of careful political alliances crumbled in minutes. The Artaxians, master traders, announced an immediate embargo on Cricks territories. The Silicon Consensus calculated a 98.7% probability that the Cricks were lying about phantom signatures. Only analyst Lyrith noticed the temperature drop. Deep within the secure data vaults of Cricks Prime, Lieutenant Rodriguez's ghostly form passed through quantum-encrypted servers, planting Dr. Cooper's latest viral algorithms. The Nighthawk hung partially phased through the facility's ceiling, ready to extract her team. Hurry! Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through the phantom comm. Their new phase detection grid will recycle in 3 minutes. Rodriguez smiled as she uploaded the final package. The Cricks' financial records, surveillance logs, and blackmail archives would blast across every Federation network simultaneously. Let them try to suppress that. 47 member worlds have formally condemned the Cricks attack, Nastol reported to her inner circle. The secure bunker beneath New Singapore hummed with activity as Federation resistance leaders coordinated their response. But the Cricks still command the largest fleet. General Senna of the Artaxian Defense Force countered. Even with their resources stretched thin chasing phantoms, the bunker's lights flickered. Admiral Morrison's translucent form stepped through the wall, followed by Dr. Cooper's solid presence. The scientist had refused phase shifting, preferring to arrive through conventional means. The Cricks fleet is about to become irrelevant, Morrison announced. Show them, James. Cooper activated a holographic display of strange energy readings. We've detected massive power signatures in Cricks space. They're building something that's distorting local space-time itself. A super weapon? Senna asked. Worse, Cooper's expression darkened. They're trying to create an anti-phase field across their core systems, but the energy requirements are drawing power from their fleet's shields. They're burning out their own defenses. Then now is the time to strike, Nastol declared. How many Federation worlds will support direct action? Morrison's ghostly form smiled. More than you think. The Cricks made a crucial mistake in their desperation. That medical transport they destroyed. Its black box survived. The full sensor logs show no phase signatures. They're massacring innocents out of pure paranoia. High Commander Zixera stared at the reports with mounting horror. 16 member worlds had already declared their independence from Federation oversight. Trade routes were disrupted. The Ghost Fleet struck with impunity, each raid exposing more corruption. The phase disruption grid must be accelerated, he commanded. Divert power from civilian infrastructure if necessary. Sir, his aide protested. 3 colony worlds are already reporting critical life support failures from the power drain. Better they die loyal than live under human influence. Zixera's crystalline flesh pulsed with rage. Install martial law protocols. Any ship that refuses immediate inspection will be fired upon. Any world that protests will be blockaded. We will not allow. The temperature dropped. Through his office wall, a single human figure phased into view. Not a warship this time. Just Admiral Morrison, her ghostly form radiating quiet authority. Listen to yourself, she said softly. Murdering your own people. Destroying your own power to chase phantoms. We didn't have to defeat you. Your fear is doing that for us. She vanished before his crystalline claws could pass through her form. But her words echoed in his mind as reports of new defections continued to flood in. The Federation was dividing, and the Cricks were finding themselves on the wrong side of history. The ancient archive lay buried 2 kilometers beneath the surface of Centauri Prime. Dr. Elena Morrison, daughter of the infamous Ghost Fleet Admiral, brushed dust from a crystalline data core that hadn't been touched in millennia. "Tell me again why we're risking our lives down here," Captain Jackson asked, his phase suit humming as he kept watch. The Cricks would shoot them on sight, quantum shifted or not. Because Elena carefully connected her decoder to the ancient tech, the precursors didn't just vanish. They were erased. And I think I know why. The data core illuminated, projecting holographic text in a language that hadn't been spoken in 50,000 years. Elena's eyes widened as she translated. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Get my mother on the quantum comm. Now." Admiral Morrison's ghostly form materialized in the Nighthawk's conference room, where Dr. Cooper and the Resistance leadership waited. Her daughter's discovery had pulled her from a raid on a Crick's munitions depot. "Play it," she ordered. Elena's hologram appeared, her face tight with urgency. The precursors didn't just discover phase shift technology. They mastered it, built entire cities that could shift between dimensions. And then, the room's displays filled with ancient footage, crystalline ships, primitive versions of modern Cricks vessels swarming around a phase-shifted world. The Cricks weren't always dominant, Elena continued. They were conquered themselves by a species called the Nexus, but they discovered that phase shifting could disrupt their crystalline biology, made them vulnerable. So they overthrew their masters using conventional weapons, then hunted down every species that showed signs of developing similar technology. "That's why they attacked Earth," Cooper breathed. "They saw the early signs of our quantum research." "It gets worse." Elena's hand shook as she accessed another file. The Cricks didn't just fear phase shift tech. They're building something called a resonance cascade device. If activated, it would collapse all phase-shifted matter within 50 light-years into normal space. Anyone caught in ghost form would. She didn't need to finish. They'd all seen what happened to failed test subjects during Project Phantom's early days. In his private chambers, High Commander Zixera watched his scientists work on the massive resonance cascade device. Soon, the human phantoms would trouble him no more. His crystalline form vibrated with anticipation. "Commander," and Abe burst in. "We've lost contact with the archaeological site on Centauri Prime." Zixera's command crystal pulsed red. "Launch an immediate assault, whatever the humans found there." The temperature dropped. Admiral Morrison's ghost fleet phased through the chamber's walls, weapons armed. But this time, she wasn't alone. Ambassador Naz Toll stepped forward, flanked by representatives from 30 Federation worlds, all wearing quantum recorders, broadcasting live across Federation space. "We've seen the archives," Naz Toll announced. "Your entire empire is built on genocide. You've manipulated us, used us to help hunt down civilizations on the verge of matching your ancestors' greatest achievement. You understand nothing." Zixera raged. "The phase shift technology is an abomination. It disrupts the natural order. It disrupts your control," Morrison countered, "because you can't stop it, can't predict it, can't dominate a species that can simply step aside. The Federation Council has called an emergency vote," Naz Toll declared. 30 worlds have already pledged to recognize Earth's sovereignty. More will follow. Your time of tyranny is ending." Zixera's crystalline form vibrated with murderous frequencies. "You think you've won. The resonance cascade device is nearly complete. When it activates, you'll murder billions across 30 worlds to maintain your power." Morrison's ghostly form stepped forward. "Thank you for confessing that to the entire Federation." Zixera froze as he noticed the quantum recorders. In his rage, he'd revealed everything. Across Federation space, the last pillars of Crick's influence crumbled. "You've forgotten the most important lesson about humans," Morrison said softly. "We don't just survive. We expose the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried." The Ghost Fleet raised their weapons as Federation security forces entered the chamber. The Krix Empire's longest-held secret was finally exposed to the light, and in the darkness between dimensions, humanity's phantom stood ready to ensure it would never be buried again. The Resonance Cascade device pulsed with sickly green energy, its crystalline spires reaching toward the stars above Krix Prime. Despite Zixera's arrest, Loyalist forces had seized control of the weapon. Federation ships surrounded the system, but none dared approach. The device's activation sequence had begun. Time to detonation. Admiral Morrison demanded from the Nighthawk's phantom-shifted bridge. 17 minutes, Dr. Cooper replied, his hands flying across holographic displays. The energy buildup is already affecting local spacetime. If it reaches critical mass, every phase-shifted being within 50 light-years dies. Morrison finished. The stakes were clear. 300 Ghost Fleet ships, thousands of crew, and any civilians caught in the effect would have their quantum states violently collapsed. "We could retreat beyond the blast radius," Commander Hayes suggested. Morrison shook her head, "and abandon 30 Federation worlds to Krix retaliation. No, we finish this. All ships, execute Operation Checkmate." Inside the Resonance Cascade facility, Krix Archon Vexnor watched the countdown with religious fervor. Let the abominations be purged. Let reality be cleansed. Warning klaxons blared. Through the facility's quantum-reinforced walls, Ghost Fleet ships began appearing. Not dozens, not hundreds, all of them. The Nighthawk led the formation, phasing directly through the device's crystalline core. Each human vessel precisely positioned itself inside the facility's structure, their phantom forms overlapping with vital systems. Morrison's voice echoed through every speaker. "Attention Krix forces. Your weapon has a critical design flaw. If we phase back to normal space while occupying the same coordinates as your equipment." "Impossible," Vexnor screamed. "The energy discharge would tear this facility apart from the inside." Morrison confirmed. "Along with every Ghost Fleet ship, we die, but we take your super weapon with us. Unless..." Aboard the Federation flagship, Unity, analyst Lyrith watched the standoff with clenched fists. The quantum broadcast showed Ghost Fleet ships threaded through the facility like nerves through muscle. "They're bluffing," a Krix commander insisted. "Humans value their lives too highly, too." "You still don't understand them," Ambassador Naztul interrupted. "Computer, display historical records of human sacrifices to save others. Show every instance of them, choosing certain death to protect their principles." The display filled with thousands of entries, soldiers falling on grenades, scientists exposing themselves to radiation to prevent meltdowns, pilots crashing to avoid populated areas. "They're not bluffing," Lyrith whispered. "They'll do it. Because that's what humans do." 5 minutes to cascade initiation, the facility's computer announced. Morrison opened a channel to all ships. "Ghost Fleet, prepare for emergency phase shift to normal space on my mark. It's been an honor." "Wait," Vexnor's voice cracked. "The device. We can't shut it down normally now. The cascade is building." "We know." Morrison's reply was calm. "That's why we brought him." Dr. Cooper. The physicist's solid form stepped through a phantom wall, carrying a quantum stabilizer. "The cascade can be reversed, but only by someone who understands both phase shift science and crystalline physics. I'll need full access to your systems." Vexnor's crystalline form vibrated with indecision. "And if we refuse, then we all die," Morrison said simply. "But your weapon dies with us. Choose." 4 minutes later, Cooper's hands danced across Krix controls as Morrison watched the energy readings fluctuate. "Quantum variance stabilizing," he reported. "Cascade reaction diminishing." "But..." He hesitated. "What aren't you telling me, James?" "The energy has to go somewhere. Someone needs to guide the discharge through the facility systems. In person, while it's still partially phase-shifted, Morrison understood immediately. How long? Seconds, maybe less. Cooper didn't meet her eyes. Kate, it has to be me. I designed the original phase-shift drive. I know how it. No. Morrison's ghostly form solidified as she stepped forward. Earth needs its brightest minds for reconstruction. Besides, she managed to smile. A captain goes down with her ship. Before Cooper could protest, Morrison's form turned phantom again. She walked into the pulsing heart of the device, her quantum state aligning with the cascade energy. And for one brilliant moment, as she guided the apocalyptic energies away from populated space, Admiral Kate Morrison existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Just like the ghost she'd become to save humanity. 6 months after the Cascade crisis, the Federation Council chamber sparkled with new purpose. The crystalline architecture remained, but now it refracted light into phantom spaces, a reminder of how close they'd come to catastrophe. Dr. Elena Morrison stood at the podium, her mother's admiral stripes now adorning her own uniform. The Ghost Fleet's quantum drives hummed behind her, their energy signatures a comfort rather than a threat. The phase shift technology was never meant to be a weapon. She addressed the assembled delegates. The precursors used it to explore dimensions we're only beginning to understand. Today, we take the first step toward reclaiming that legacy. The chamber's holoscreens displayed the newly christened Morrison Institute of Quantum Sciences. Built from the remnants of the Cascade device, it would serve as both a research facility and a training center for phase shift operations. Admiral Morrison's sacrifice showed us the true potential of this technology, Dr. Cooper added from his position beside Elena. The physicist had aged years in those final moments with Kate, but his eyes burned with renewed purpose, not to hide or to harm, but to bridge the gaps between species, between realities themselves. In high orbit above Earth, Commander Hayes watched reconstruction efforts through the Nighthawk's viewport. The Ghost Fleet now served as a joint Federation peacekeeping force, their phantom capabilities reserved for humanitarian missions and scientific exploration. Incoming transmission from New Singapore, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. Ambassador Nastol's delegation is ready for phase shift training. Hayes nodded, remembering Kate's final orders. Show them a better way forward. The Federation's youngest species were eager to learn, to explore the quantum realm under careful supervision. Ma'am, Rodriguez hesitated. Long-range sensors are detecting unusual readings from the Hercules cluster, similar to the precursor signatures we found in the archives. Hayes smiled. Kate would have loved this. A new mystery to explore. Plot an intercept course. Let's see what other wonders are hiding between dimensions. On Crix Prime, the rehabilitation was slower but steady. The crystalline species struggled to accept their reduced status, but the evidence of their empire's atrocities was irrefutable. Their technology and expertise remained valuable, but never again would they hold dominion over others. The phase shift principles actually complement our crystalline biology, a young Crix scientist explained to a Federation review board. If we'd studied it earlier, instead of fearing it. Fear is the easiest path to power, Ambassador Naztul observed, but rarely the wisest one. Elena Morrison stood in her mother's old office aboard the Nighthawk, now permanently docked as a memorial and training facility. The quantum readings from Kate's final moments played across her screens, a symphony of impossible energy patterns. She's not dead, is she? Cooper asked softly from the doorway. Not in any way we understand. Elena shook her head. The readings suggest her quantum state dispersed across multiple dimensions. The cascade energy didn't destroy her pattern, it expanded it. Somewhere, everywhere. She's still out there. Watching. Protecting. Cooper smiled. A ghost watching over humanity. She'd like that. We've detected similar patterns, Elena revealed. Quantum echoes in phantom space. Some match precursor signatures. Others. She pulled up a stellar map dotted with anomalies. I think we're not the only ones exploring the spaces between spaces. Your mother would say that's what humans do best, Cooper mused. Find new frontiers. Push beyond them. Show others the way. Alina's hand traced the Admiral's stripes on her uniform. The Ghost Fleet was never about vengeance. It was about possibility, about showing the galaxy that strength comes in many forms. Through the viewport, Earth glowed with renewed purpose. Federation ships of all species trained alongside Phantom vessels, learning to navigate both normal space and the quantum realm. The barriers between civilizations were fading, just like the barriers between dimensions. And somewhere in the quantum mists, Admiral Kate Morrison's legacy lived on, not as a weapon or a warning, but as a bridge to humanity's next great adventure. The Ghost Fleet had become something greater than its creators imagined, a reminder that the unknown needn't be feared, only explored. Together.